My name is Joseph Hodge. I also go by the name of Santi. That's the name of my studio. What would you like to know about me? My family, I was sad with my grandmother. She was a lady with 12 children. She got in Seacouseway. She was born in Carrot Bay, actually, and had 12 children. My mother was probably the fifth, one of the fifth of them. And she had six children, my mother, but I was not her favorite, especially after she divorced. She always tell me I'm getting in trouble by the things that I always ask and talking about. But I was always a curious child, curious to know about life. I'm curious. So I was always asking questions that some of the elder people wouldn't answer or couldn't answer. And I'm still curious. I was born in Curacao. My mother left Curacao in 1953. I was 2 years old. I didn't know anything about Curacao, couldn't speak Dutch or Papiamento. When she lived in St. Martin for a year or two, and then to St. Thomas, and she moved to Tortola. I was very young. I could remember a French school that she put me into. Well, that's not me, my brother as well. He learned to speak a little French, nothing that I could remember today, because she was just passing through St. Martin. But the first school I was hooked up in was St. George's School in 1960. And St. George's School was then close to the water on Main Street, Rotown. The ocean was right under the school. And Joseph Smith Bakery was close. Rotown had one street. My father was an artist as well, long before me. I learned about him through my grandmother traveling with the church to Anguilla and St. Martin. She came back, she asked me, well, you know your father he do the same thing you does? So I used to paint before I knew he was an artist. And I was anxious to meet him because my mother divorced kind of early in their life. But I was painting before I knew that. But when I met him, he was a Christian. So I never used to criticize his work. He used to paint paintings that I never did, like the Last Supper and Jesus and these things. These are things I look at because my mother used to buy them. So I used to get in trouble with the minister by asking him, how come Jesus is sitting down with a bunch of white people around a table? Why have any prejudice? He don't like black people? That was my question. I find it strange to see Jesus in the middle of a table with all these disciples and none of them black. Knowing the history of Jesus, I know he was born in Ethiopia, not Europe. So I was contradicted. I grew up mostly outside of the home. I used to go fishing a lot, Peter Island, with Mr. Smith. So I was mostly always on the sea, and not too much around the family. But when I think of the family, I think of my grandmother, who would always give us advice and always tell us what to eat, what to drink. Always on a counseling pad, always putting us on the right track. She was the best woman I ever know. She lived 104 years old, and I was still in touch with her in her last days. She lived in the States as well. Her family used to fight for her. who would have her, who would have her. But I'd want to spend more time in Tortola, and they wouldn't allow her to be in Tortola. They live in the States, live in St. Thomas, and they was fighting to have her. She was resourceful. I was in school in fifth grade, more or less. Just left St. George's School, went to the high school, long school. Marianne Helm was a woman I used to peek in her studio. She was living right beneath the hospital. She used to have beautiful paintings in her house. But I always wanted to be a historical person from in school because I had some very strange teachers. They're still strange. Because when I asked them one day, I said I love the Robin Hood, Robinson Crusoe story. I asked the question to a teacher. I said, is it real, the story? She said, no, it's fiction. I said, fiction? Why teach us fiction? That turned me off. It turned me off from school. Lesson turned me off from everything. Because teachers teaching us fiction, and we have so much history. I was only about 12, 13 years old. Well, I started reading at an early age historical documents. I learned about the people from Asante village in Ghana. My grandmother, I associate her with Asante because the way she cooked, she used to tell us this is the proper way to do it and so forth. So I was always influenced by the Asante and the story about them, who they were. They were proud people from West Africa, Ghana. Well, we had a nice guy operating the office in England, the London office, and he wanted me to show work in London. But I didn't like the person he put in charge of the group who should leave the BVI. But I had nothing to do with that. It was successful in London, not so much on sales, but I went there about 3 times with a show. But there was a competition in the BVI about someone came to me and told me I should enter. It was about talking about the British Virgin Islands and its custom, its culture. So I enter, and one day they called me, tell me I won. But I wish I had more chance and time to put into that. But I don't know who I'll enter or who was a part of it. But they say I won, so I was honored that I take part in it. Well, no, in the BVI, we don't have a museum. And we don't even have a proper gallery. So I wanted to be somebody involved with that, or be a part of the culture by showing my work in any respect I can. Well, growing up in the BVI, as a young man, I was experiencing things that you're not seeing today. Donkey cart, mule, horses, and we had mainly dirt road. It was not enough to talk about the BVI. The BVI is a place with a lot of history, a lot of pirate history as well. We name a lot of places after these pirates, but these were not nice people. Like Sir Francis Drake, he couldn't even go back to England unless he got gold or steal gold from somebody. And the Queen wouldn't allow that. So he was a pirate, uncharted. Yes, I could be a good storyteller. Depends on who I'm speaking to, because it depends on what story they wish to hear. But you have to read to understand the history of the British Virgin Islands. Because before we had tourism, we had ourselves, we had fishing, we had gardening, we had grounds, and we were feeding ourselves. We used to also supply food to St. Thomas. So there's a lot to talk about in the BVI. Virgin Gara, we have the copper mine, which was one of the reasons England was there. But there's no story about that in our school. We never write no story about a copper mine. And yet copper was extracted from the copper mine by England. But we were never told where it goes to or whatever. The pirates around here, the Spanish people, before we had the English. And in 1666 is when the English came here and they settled in Virgin Gara. And they brought people from other Caribbean islands, mainly Anguilla, Antigua, and so forth. But we were not even on the map. I'll ask them to read a lot, get more information about the country. Read, don't just listen to people. A lot of the people of the British Virgin Islands have left long before now. We had people leaving since the 40s, the 60s, but never to come back. So read a lot. They could paint what they see, but life didn't just start there. These islands were known. They were harvests to salt. Peter Island was where the wreck of the Rhone used to be anchored in the BVI. It's after they leave there during a hurricane, and he leave in the middle of a storm. Mr. Smith, whoever he was, which he shouldn't have done that, but the anchor is still in Peter Island. He take the anchor away from the boat and set sail in the middle of a hurricane. Information that we as children need to know. We need to know where we live, who was the government at the time. We didn't know a lot of things from in school because, like I said, they were teaching us fiction. And I disagree with fiction teaching children as history. That was in the 60s. How could you teach us fiction in this country full of history? So that was a problem for me that I see in the country at the time, because we have a lot of story among the local people that some people never heard of. And we had a lot of buried treasure from Anegada, Tortola, and Virgin Gara. Some find treasure, but never heard of nobody delivering none to government. Nola, he was a friend of my uncle. which is Cromwell Nibs. I had to take food to him while he was in prison because my mother, when they erupted the police station, they went and take over the police station and put on switch while the police was sleeping, and they put on the wrong switch and tried to escape from the prison department, but they were captured. They gave themselves about a month later. I was young and didn't know anything about Bait Hill and how they were selling. The then politician was selling Anigata and Wickhamski for some kind of money, and Lindy De Castro was the one who break the news to Noel. And Noel organized a match in the 60s, 1968, that a lot of people still don't know about. But he organized a march, went to Government House, take down the flag, put up his flag. Like I said, I was in school. I used to pass the two jeeps that the police captured, and they were chained together in front of the police station. So I know they had my uncle and they had Noel for a chance. But it's a story that I think the school children need to know how Wickhamski was built and the purpose of it. So a lot of these stories are not told to the children, not even Arthur Hodge in Bellevue, who killed his slave for the falling of a mango. We had some real cutthroat pirates. Arthur Hodge, Chapel Hill, where this was in Bellevue. The school children nowadays couldn't talk about that in school, couldn't talk about it. And these are things beyond my time here, but the hanging of Arthur Hodge, there was a book on that. They say he was hung here. I can't tell you where his grave is. I asked a man if he could show me his grave. He told me yes, where that grave is, there's too much snake down there, so he wouldn't go and show me. He don't like snakes. But Arthur Hodge was buried in Bellevue. But the book say he was buried behind the Anglican church. But Arthur Hodge was a wicked pirate. Wicked. So there's not much I could tell you about him. Well, everybody have a house on Wickhamsky now. All the old people who match or didn't match. Most of the people who matched was from Rotown, not East End, not Caribbean, it was Rotown. It was like there was dirt road. The people couldn't travel as they are now to come from Bruce Bay or Caribbean. And there was no road passable enough for people to travel in those days. So the calamity was in Rotown, Tortola, and it was among the people. A trailblazer. I would like to be known as. Well, no, I'm not liked by my leaders because I paint pictures like of the Maroon culture and who they are. I met them, and they asked me to come into their community because I look like them, my spirit like them. You know what I like about the Maroons? They see my spirit, and they are very spiritual people. And they are from Suriname. You have those in Jamaica too. I study those as well. And the first time I had a show in Fort Butt Hotel in 1978, it was the shortest show I ever had. The governor was there. They thought I had Maroons outside. But the Maroons are the great people of the Caribbean, and they fought for their own freedom and run their own society. And they don't have no prison where they live. They don't carry prisoners. Well, truthful, honest, and spiritual. Well, I don't know if but I love the truth and I love being honest. And I wish we had people like that in our leadership quality. But I wish to be a person who would know or remember what we used to be in the 60s. The people here were not starving. They were living people. Most of those people are living in the United States today. And that's a shame. They're living all over the world. Now and again I might see one or two visit, but they ain't come to stay. And the BVI government should do a lot more to help those people come back, or their children come back, to help sustain what we consider as culture. Because culture is a living thing. It's not something you just talk about. It's how we live, how we still live, and continue to live. But the children don't know.
Joseph Ashanti Hodge remains one of the territory's greatest visual artists. He has produced a multitude of pieces which have perfectly captured the cultural landscape of these Virgin Islands. Truthful, honest, and spiritual, Joseph Ashanti Hodge also identifies as a Pan-Africanist. He has closely followed, throughout his life, the legacy of one of the earliest and greatest Pan-African figures, Edward Wilmot Blyden. Joseph Hodge is also a founding member of the long-standing African Studies Club in the British Virgin Islands. In addition, he was the artist for the Association for the Preservation of the Virgin Islands Heritage 2014 to 2018, which managed the restoration of the African Burial Ground project at St. Philip's Anglican Church ruins in Kingstown, Tortola. The Department of Culture is pleased to have produced this feature as one of the highlights for Culture and Tourism Month 2021. This project is one way of capturing the legacies of artists who have been blazing the path in the cultural arts of the Virgin Islands.